What is up, guys? Welcome back to the next layer where we go deep with athletes, adventurers, and change makers pushing limits in the hardest conditions. Today's guest is Jimmy Krupka, a skier who went from making the U.S. national team out of high school to funding his own comeback after tearing his ACL. We'll talk all about that, what it takes to chase the Olympic dream when the path gets messy with injuries, setbacks, and a bunch of other stuff in between. His story features resilience, a lifelong passion, and a pure love for the slopes, which is what we're all about at ELOS. So this is one you don't want to miss. Let's get right into it. How we doing, my man?
I'm doing great. I'm stoked to be here and see where this conversation heads.
Awesome, dude. Well, I think we won't be short of content in this conversation because I think you got a pretty cool story and we definitely want to elevate that. So let's go back all the way to the beginning though, as we always do, to learn a little bit more about you. So you, I guess, had skiing in your blood from an early age, if that's correct. If you want to just talk a little bit about how you got into it and then kind of through mountain school and all that kind of stuff, we'll kind of start there and then build off of that, if that works with you.
Yeah, that totally works. Yeah. I mean, yeah, skiing was definitely in my blood. Parents were huge skiers, and so I got on skis at age 2. Like they put me on little plastic skis to walk around the house on age 1 when I could like just walk. And so it was kind of predestined for me, but ski racing wasn't necessarily predestined. Like that was something that I kind of pushed on them. They just wanted to ski on the weekends and have some fun. And I was like, I gotta be in the race program. This looks awesome. I saw these posters of like Bodie Miller and all these guys racing. So eventually I did that at like age 7 or 8 or something like that. And I got to a point, I was good enough that we were living in Mass at the time, and going up to Vermont on the weekends just wasn't enough if I wanted to actually pursue it. So I started boarding at the Green Mountain Valley School, which is like a ski academy, in a tiny town in Vermont, Waitsfield, Vermont. And eventually my family just moved up. The rest of my siblings wanted to try it out too. And,
Oh, wow.
and my dad kind of did the back and forth between Vermont and Boston when he could. The family just kind of made it work. My mom started working, at the school, and it was kind of a total 180 from kind of the
That's
life
wild,
that
dude.
we had been planning. But yeah,
How old were you when you ended up starting at or when you enrolled at Green Mountain Valley School?
I just went up there for a winter, so 7th grade,
Seventh
and then
grade.
yeah, through high school.
So that's crazy. So first of all, you got to send me some pictures of you and skis when you were 1 years old. I got to see that. But also that's crazy. So basically, you were kind of the precedent setter in your family to make this full push into like competitive skiing, I guess. So you said your mom moved up there, like you guys all moved up to Vermont at some point then when you were in school.
Yeah. Originally in like 7th grade, my mom was like, flexible with work. She would kind of make it so she could be free like for half the week. So she'd kind of like live up there with me half the week. And then eventually the whole family moved up there, which is crazy looking back on it. Like if I was a parent, I'd be like, we're not doing this. You kidding me? So it was a huge leap of faith for them.
Dude, I mean, any journey in sports, I feel like always starts and is credited in some capacity to the family, 1000%, like to your parents getting you into it or supporting you, sacrificing, as we're talking about right now. Like that is a
Yeah.
big jump. So little plug for your parents, shout out, because that's
Yeah, shout out
amazing,
my
man,
parents.
to get you where you are today. I mean, on that same topic, like I'm super curious, like you going from obviously like falling in love with skiing, but then to getting into ski academy culture. Like what is it like once you get enrolled there and that becomes essentially your full-time job from such a young age? I mean, you're 7th, 8th grade. That's what are you at that point, like 12 to 14 years old? What is it like in
Yeah.
that shift to it becoming kind of like a professional thing almost at that age?
It was for sure a shift, but in the best way. Like I lived and breathed ski racing at that age. It was hard to leave my friends from home. It's always when you have a group of good friends, it's hard to leave them. But like once I got to Vermont, I was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I had so much energy. Like I was one of those kids that would get home from school and just like bike around or scooter or build jumps or run around in the woods literally all day. I had so much energy, and I'm so thankful that I had like that structure of a ski academy where you're working out like 2 workouts a day, 2 hours each, aside from like Mondays or something, which were off. And then in the winter, like skiing all morning and then going to school until 6 at night. Like these crazy long days with tons and tons of activity were what I needed because I just had all this energy.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good perspective too, because I think I have the same personality as you, so I would have loved something like that when I was younger. Obviously, I wasn't into skiing. I was a soccer guy my whole life, but dude, that's like, I feel like it's got to be so unique though, and like around like-minded people too, which is cool. I'm sure like did that kind of help that transition out of like, losing your friends from Massachusetts, like at least getting into a culture where everyone's kind of bought into the same vision? Or would you say you stood out amongst those folks in terms of the commitment you had at a young age?
It was cool being amongst like-minded people for sure.
Yeah.
But then there was levels to it. There were some kids where the dream was more their parents than theirs and they weren't bought in, or some kids who just like didn't want to put in the same work. But luckily I kind of found a group of like 4 guys that were a year older than me that were pushing extremely hard in the gym, pushing extremely hard in the training hill. And that was kind of who I latched onto. I kind of found my group of guys that wanted to push it to that extra level, and we kind of stood out in our way in that way.
The high performers kind of group together. I feel like that happens often. That leads into the next point of so speak a little bit about the national team, like the recruitment process. Again, this was around while you were in high school, right? Is when you initially got recruited, correct?
Yeah. Basically,
Cool.
What happened is I had some good results, and some of the national team coaches liked my skiing, and so I got invited to this tryout camp my senior spring of high school. We went out to Mammoth Mountain in California, did some spring training, and they took a look at 15 of us, had us ski for like a week. Maybe to this day, I've never worked harder in my life. It was suddenly hit me like this is the one opportunity I have, especially in ski racing. Like I think in every sport, but these opportunities they come so fleetingly, and sometimes you just get lucky. There's plenty of people I know with amazing talent that just never made it. So I was somehow aware of this and somehow like just worked my butt off and skied the best I've ever skied. And they gave me a spot on the team, like the U.S. development team kind of thing. And I did 2 years there.
Gotcha.
And that kind of got me into the national team pipeline.
Gotcha. So explain that. What is it? So that you said that it's like a 2-year development program. What does that entail? And like, what does that look like?
You could probably spend between like 1 to 3 years, probably 4 is the max, on the development team, and then you kind of age out of it. And the U.S. there's an organization called U.S. Ski and Snowboard. It's the national governing body, and so they have these teams. They have the D team, the development team, and then they kind of have like the Europa Cup level team, which is the team that goes to basically like the minor leagues in Europe. And then there's the World Cup team, which competes on the pro league, that yearly pro league. And I slowly worked my way up through that system, but it's hard. Like you have to requalify for the national team every single year. So there was 1 year, for instance, where I didn't requalify for 100% support, but I was allowed to kind of be an invitee at some camp. So that season I attended Dartmouth College and skied for the Dartmouth team, which is a high level D1 team. So it was great training. The next year I was like more involved with the national team. So it was kind of a little up and down.
That is pretty crazy, man. So it's essentially it's basically like a new tryout every year is what you're kind of saying there, right?
Yeah.
So like new talent comes in, you got to fight for your spot. Man, that's brutal. And it's especially at a young age too. So you were going through that grind. You mentioned Dartmouth, like you're going through that grind on and off for like 7 years for the most part, right? Like, is that fair to say? 7 years?
Yeah, about 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got cut from the national team after that. Yeah.
Right. So we'll get to that. But so in that 7-year period, were you always like located out of Vermont, or was this a heavy travel period? Was this like school was kind of like secondary, or was this kind of like were you all located primarily in Vermont still during that time? Like during high school years?
I made the national team, like the development team, after high school, and the U.S. ski and snowboard headquarters are based in Park City, Utah. So I found a family I could stay with for free and lived in Park City for like every summer and fall, which is you ski a little bit in the summer and fall, but a lot of it is just training in the gym. So I felt blessed. Like I had a free place to stay in like one of the most beautiful places. I'm working out, like rubbing shoulders with all these guys who had won gold medals and people that would go on to win medals. It was a really cool place. So I spent like the better, like most summers and falls for those 7 years in Park City. And then the rest of the year I would travel. I would spend like the month of August in New Zealand with the national team, parts of September in either Chile or Europe, and then basically the whole winter in Europe, Canada, and North America. And then actually on top of that, every spring, Dartmouth has this great semester set up where it's trimesters. So I could go to the 10-week trimester in the spring after the ski season ended at Dartmouth in Hanover, New Hampshire. So I was able to like slowly work through undergrad.
Gotcha. That's really cool. So what was so that's a lot to unpack there, but what was like I know. So when you're kind of in this lifestyle of kind of following the snow, I guess is probably the best way to put it. One thing you said there was just like you being surrounded with the top performers in the sport constantly. Do you think like talk a little bit about how that helped your development from a performance standpoint and just like an overall like professional standpoint of just being surrounded by some of those top performers? I'm sure that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, like one of my idols was Ted Ligety, who is one of the greatest giant slalom skiers of all time. And he was working out in the gym every day, and I got to see like what it took to get to that level. He worked out incredibly hard, and like, you know, it was really cool to see. We played basketball against him, and his competitive drive was something that I've never experienced. I mean, like, we're getting elbows to the face. It's like all out war playing against this guy. And I was like, okay, this is what it's like to be that kind of athlete. So that was really cool. And then one quick other story was funny. Like there was, the summer of 2017 was before the 2018 Olympics. And there was like, various people going through the gym because it was an Olympic year. There's this like girl, and I'm like, she's always there. And I have no idea who she is. And then I turn on the TV at the Olympics, like a few months later, and there's this girl winning gold medal in the snowboard events, and she's Chloe Kim, like one of the best snowboarders ever. I worked out next to her this whole time and had no idea who she was. So there's kind of some funny stories like that.
Yeah, that's brutal. One of those times you had to say, hey, I'm Jimmy. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Dude, that's wild. Yeah, it's such a cool environment, man. And I feel like this is probably an impossible question to answer, but I'm super curious about like, what was your favorite time of the year to like, you said like you're going to New Zealand, Chile. What was your favorite time of the year kind of in the national team circuit as you guys were traveling around?
I mean, a really good time of year was always the beginning of the year. Like most of the national team would end up in Colorado at Copper Mountain, which is kind of the national team training center at that time. They get the snow in the U.S. the earliest, like end of October, beginning of November. And everyone would show up there. We'd get our U.S. ski team uniforms. Other national teams around the world would start to show up because there's a World Cup in Beaver Creek, Colorado, like at the beginning of December. So that was the like excitement, like anything is possible. That was a fun time of year.
Right. So now let's talk a little bit more like about your journey and the setbacks that you went through, because I mean, just a lot to unpack there. So you mentioned it earlier. You were cut from the national team in 2023, and you tore your ACL around that same time, correct? So can you speak a little bit about that process? Mentality, I guess, is the biggest thing, because I've been around sports. I'm lucky to not have a big injury, but I know a lot of people that have had big injuries. So speak a little bit about, we just went through your entire story. Your entire life was skiing, and then it all seems like it's taken away from you. So speak a little bit about that. Not to bring up a sore subject, but yeah, speak a little bit about that for the crowd.
Well, it was an interesting 2 years. It was kind of this 2-year span where I got cut from the national team in 2023. You're right. Mm-hmm. And then like a few months later in New Zealand, I won a race that suddenly jumped my ranking way up and got me a World Cup start. So I started my first World Cup race ever not being on the national team. And then I proceeded to lower my ranking even more. So I was ranked like top 60 in the world. And so I spent like 2 years ranked top 60 in the world, but not quite being able to convince the U.S. ski team to provide me those World Cup starts, because they're actually in charge of them and they allot the starting spots. So I had like 2 years of like almost being there, but not being there. And at the end of that 2 years, I tore my ACL. And it was weird. Like, you would think, I broke my leg 4 years ago pretty badly. And when that happened, it was like absolutely devastating. I was like dying to get back on skis as soon as possible, all this stuff. ACL injury this time was devastating, but it was almost like, okay, like I can breathe for a second. Like I, don't have to keep chasing sponsors for at least a few months. Like I don't have
Right.
to, try to make this like ski team give me spots. It's just like I'm going to regroup. I'm going to get all my ducks in a row. I'm going to kind of learn from my mistakes and give it like a really good go again now that I've caught my breath. So I'm dying to go skiing right now, but maybe there's like a silver lining in needing that break.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely, I think, let's talk about mindset for a second because I think that's super important. So you said so you went through one major injury. Now you're kind of going through another one, correct?
Yeah.
So speak a little bit about, your process in going through this and like, yeah, you're dying to get back on the slopes, but I guess maybe like the positive approach, like you're talking about, that there might be a silver lining in this. What kind of helps you get through? What tactics help you get through, times like this?
I kind of just piece my motivation together from various sources depending on the day, I guess. So some days it's like, okay, my parents sacrificed a lot. I had to fund myself for the past 2 years, but I can't do it all myself. I've put my life savings into it. I've put all the sponsors' money I can find into it. I have all these side hustles, but I still am short. So my parents like help me out a little bit. And so, which is like crazy to ask of my parents after all they've already helped me out with. But so that's
Right.
one of the major things is like my parents have put so much into this. I owe it to them to give it everything I have. Some days it's just like I motivate myself by thinking about that like 6-year-old Jimmy that fell in love with ski racing. That just was like so stoked to try to make one turn better than the next and try to win races. And other days I just, just try to love the sport and stay motivated that way.
Hell yeah, man. That's sometimes the most powerful thing to find the motivator is for the people that you care about most. That's definitely one of the biggest motivators you can find. A lot of things are bigger than yourself, dude, especially as you said. It's kind of all coming full circle here, this story, just because, the sacrifices that they made in the beginning, they're the ones in your corner still. And so that's awesome, man. So real quick, before we kind of get to the punchline here, World Racing Academy. So you said you're self-funded for the last couple of years. What is that? And kind of speak a little bit about what that is and how that's going to help your journey to get back to the top, basically.
It's really cool. I would like to say that their branding is pretty bad, and I always tell the head coach this. It's not an academy. It's an independent professional team, and for some reason, like it's a European-based team, and for some reason, academy got lost in translation along the way.
Okay.
But yeah, World Racing Academy, WRA, it's based in South Tyrol in Italy, so the German-speaking part of Italy, kind of in that corner by Austria and Switzerland and Germany, and it's basically a bunch of misfits. It's like we've got an Australian because the Australians don't really have a national team. We've got a couple Japanese guys, same thing. The Japanese team isn't very well funded. And then we've got a lot of guys like Germans, Italians, Swiss, and then some Canadians who all, like me, for whatever reason, aren't supported by their national team, despite being extremely talented skiers, some of whom are on the World Cup. So it's a really cool group of guys, and everyone's got a chip on their shoulder because of their situation, and everyone's having to fund themselves. And so it's a cool group.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. And so what is that? Is that, you're going through a very similar season to what you're describing on the national team, pretty much?
Yeah, same kind of thing. Like we spend the month of August in New Zealand, we go to Europe in September, October, and basically stay in Europe the whole winter, occasionally go to Canada or the US. But yeah, same kind of deal, on the road most of the year.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. So let's talk again about just goals for you. Like I know you still have that World Cup comeback and the Olympics on your mind. So speak a little bit about what short and long term goals look like for you in this sport that you've given a lot to.
Yeah, Olympics for sure. I mean, like I was hanging out with my little brother the other day. He's 8 years younger, and he just entered the national team pipeline. He just made like the development team, which was cool for me to see. But we were sitting together the other day, and he just mentioned like, how cool would it be to walk through the opening ceremonies? Like, just think about that. And we were just like, and so it's that feeling, like, okay, we could walk through the opening ceremonies. That would be so incredible. So Olympics for sure. But the first step next season is like getting back healthy, not rushing it because you can re-injure yourself or you can just kind of get into bad habits. So just doing the recovery right. I'll be back on snow in November, and I'll just try to drop my rankings as much as possible next year. And if I can drop my rankings, top 80, top 60 in the world next year, then I would be putting myself in a position to start World Cup races next year or the year after that. And that's the road to the Olympics in 4 years. I wouldn't go to the Olympics this year. It's too soon after my injury, but 4 years would be the goal.
I love it, man. I love it, man. It's calculated and short-term goals to get to the long-term goal, and nothing happens overnight.
Exactly.
We wish you the absolute best, man. Dude, you have an absolutely sick story, sick story, and we'll be sure to help promote the WRA, everything that you're doing. Fantastic stuff. Before we round out, and I have a couple more questions, we'll just do like a little rapid fire that we always do. Do you have in your racing days, competitive racing days, that are still in the forefront, but I guess looking back now since you've been out for a while, what's your pre-race go-to song, if you have one? I don't know if there's any that comes to mind right away, but it's probably tough.
It's definitely tough, and I cycle through a million types of music. Sometimes it's country music. But like, if I really need something, whether it's skiing or in the gym, it's probably Lil Wayne.
I love it. Nice. There's a new mashup actually for your country side, Morgan Wallen, Miami. Lil Wayne remix just came out actually.
No way.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. That's awesome. And then I know we haven't really talked about this. So if you weren't skiing, what do you think you'd be doing? That's kind of probably impossible to answer because you've been skiing since you've been like 6-7 years old. But what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't skiing? What are some other hobbies, passions of yours?
If I grew up on a beach, it would be surfing for sure, competitive surfing, or I'd be a surf bum. Potentially mountain biking. Love mountain biking, and that might have satisfied like that need to compete and like push my body.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. And then we kind of talk about this, and I'm assuming it'll be a similar answer, but we always ask all of our guests at the end, how would you define your next layer? Which is, can be anything from like physically, mentally, kind of anything like that. What goals, anything. How would you define what your next layer is? What Jimmy's next layer is?
My next layer is, and what's next for me after skiing?
Yeah, again, not even that, just like what's, some things on your mind as your kind of next phase in life and like things that you're prioritizing. It could be like anything personal, obviously professional for you and your career or anything. And we talked a little bit about, it would be the Olympics, right? But if there's anything else a little bit deeper or, even
like I'm
level,
Shrek.
Exactly.
Like I'm onion. Like I'm an onion. I'm Shrek. I got that other layer. Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that question. I think it's probably, I'd love to give back in some way after ski racing. So I have a podcast that I run. That's my little way of like trying to get information and education to young skiers. Maybe my way of giving back in the future is coaching, but like giving back for sure in some form or another is probably that next layer.
I love it, man. What's the name of the pod?
Arc City. ARC City. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we'll cross-reference that for sure. We'll put that in the description so you guys can check that out.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, man, no, it was a great conversation. Really cool story, man. It's kind of all that we're about here at the Next Layer is kind of elevating folks like Jimmy, and kind of putting that story on the forefront because it's really cool, man. It's all about performance and grit and resilience and getting to that next phase. So again, thanks, my man, for hopping on today. We'll be sure to link all of your socials in the description as well as that pod like we just talked about. And then for us, as always, elosthermal.com, all of our socials at elosthermal. And again, thanks everyone. We'll be back next week with another guest who's pushing boundaries in their own lane. But until then, stay warm, stay gritty, and keep chasing that next layer. Thanks, everyone.